Welcome back, everyone. I always look forward to these deep dives with you. And today, we're tackling a giant George Washington.
Yeah, the man, the myth, the legend. I'm really excited to get into this one.
Me too. We've got excerpts from a biography and a podcast episode, both offering different perspectives. But we're going beyond just dates and battles, right?
Absolutely. I mean, everyone knows the basics. What we want to unpack is what made Washington the leader he was. What can we learn from him today?
That's the key. Imagine for a second you're in his shoes. A brand new nation depending on you. The pressure must have been insane. So how did he handle it? What made him tick? Let's find out. Both of our sources start with his early life,
Right.
right?
Born 1732, Virginia, plantation life.
Hmm.
Hard work was ingrained in him from the start.
Then boom, his father dies when he's just 11, forced to grow up fast.
Yeah, think about that responsibility landing on a kid's shoulders. Limited schooling, but he teaches himself surveying. That says a lot about his drive.
It's like he was a self-made man before that was even a thing. And you know what else? As a teenager, he writes these 110 rules of civility and decent behavior.
Oh, yeah. Like a guide to being a stand-up guy in the 1700s.
Totally. And it's not just about manners. Rule 33, when another speaks, be attentive yourself and disturb not the audience. Sounds like leadership 101 to me.
Right. Not just some kid's ideas. These were principles he actually lived by. It's how he built trust, made people want to follow him later on.
Okay, so we've got this young guy, hard worker, strong morals. Then comes the French and Indian War. He's just 21 when he's leading troops.
Showing potential, but also, let's not forget, fort necessity. Early defeat.
Right, he wasn't perfect from the get-go. Important to remember.
Exactly. It's a learning experience,
Yeah.
crucible moment. Makes him stronger for what's to come.
And then, of course, the Battle of the Monongahela. He becomes a colonial hero, courage under fire, rallying the troops.
You have to wonder how those early battles shaped him for the revolution later on.
Absolutely. It's like he's being tested, molded into the leader he'll need to be.
And then bam, revolution breaks out. He's given command of the Continental Army in 1775. And remember, this is not a professional army.
Right, it's farmers, shopkeepers, average Joes taking on the British Empire. The odds were stacked against them.
Huge underdog story. And Washington's leadership wasn't just about tactics. Think Valley Forge. That winter was brutal. Suffering, disease.
But he stays with his troops, shares their hardship, leading by example. That's powerful.
Totally. And he wasn't winning every single battle.
Yeah.
But he knew how to pick his spots, focus on smaller victories that added up over time.
Wearing down the enemy, strategically.
Exactly. And then, of course, Christmas, 1776, crossing the Delaware, the victory at Trenton. Classic underdog move.
That's the stuff of legend. What a story.
Audacious, right, but also carefully planned. It's not just bravery, it's strategic thinking, taking a calculated risk.
So he's brave, tough, and a strategic thinker. This guy is more than just a soldier.
Absolutely. And his work wasn't over after the war was won.
Right. 1787, the Constitutional Convention. Just his presence there lent the whole thing legitimacy.
Think about it. He could have grabbed power after the war. But instead, he helps create a system based on checks and balances.
It shows he was committed to something bigger than himself. And in 1789, boom, unanimously elected president.
That level of respect is almost unimaginable today.
I know, right? But then he's faced with this massive task, building a government, a nation from scratch.
It's mind-blowing. He sets up the cabinet, gives the first inaugural address.
Things we take for granted today, H.E. started them, and he had his work cut out for him. This is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Building a whole nation isn't exactly a walk in the park. Washington's presidency was full of challenges. National debt, foreign entanglements, you name it. And on top of it all, he's setting up precedents that we just kind of take for granted now. The cabinet, the inaugural address.
It's like he was writing the rule book as he went along. And he didn't just surround himself with people who'd agree with him on everything. I mean, Hamilton and Jefferson in the same cabinet. Talk about clashing personalities.
Oh, yeah. Those cabinet meetings must have been fireworks. But it shows you something about Washington's leadership, right? Bringing together these brilliant, very different minds.
Harnessing that brain power. And speaking of tough decisions, both sources point to the 1793 Neutrality Proclamation, staying out of those European conflicts.
That was huge. It shows his long-term vision. He knew getting dragged into those wars would be disastrous for a young nation like America. He was playing chess, not checkers.
Thinking ahead, and he wasn't afraid to take some heat, backing Hamilton's financial plan. That was controversial, to say the least.
But it worked in the long run. Sometimes the right decisions aren't the popular ones. Washington knew that.
He had guts. 2 terms, and then boom, he walks away. Refuses a third term. Can you imagine that happening today?
It's almost unheard of. Most leaders, they'd hang on to power as long as they could. But Washington, he understood something different, setting a precedent, showing that power isn't permanent.
The peaceful transfer of power, it's a cornerstone of democracy. And his farewell address, talk about wisdom, warning against political factions, urging unity.
It's like he was looking into the future, seeing the challenges that were coming. And let's be honest, his words hit home hard today. Divisions everywhere you look.
It's scary how relevant his warnings still are. But beyond the big historical stuff, what I really loved were those personal lessons the podcast brought up, like that, quote, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
So true.
It's all about putting in the effort. Washington, he might not have been the most naturally gifted guy, but he outworked everyone. Organized, dedicated, it's inspiring.
It really is. And this one, to be prepared for war, is one of the most effective means of preserving peace. That's not just about military stuff, is it? No, it's about being ready for whatever life throws at you. Thinking ahead, mitigating risks, that's a valuable skill in any situation.
Being proactive, not reactive. And the quote about integrity, few men have virtue to withstand the highest bidder. In today's world, that hits hard.
Integrity is everything. It's a basis of trust. And you can't lead without trust. Washington understood that, leading by example, doing what's right, even when it's tough.
And this one resonated with me too. We should never despair. Our situation before has been unpromising and has changed for the better. He faced some dark times, but never gave up hope.
Resilience, bouncing back from setbacks. We all go through tough times. But Washington, he shows us that we can overcome them. It's about that inner strength.
So we've seen him as a young man, a soldier, a president. What stands out to me is it wasn't just his position or his skills, it was his character.
You're right. Integrity, humility, resilience. Those were at the core of his leadership. It's a powerful reminder leadership isn't about titles. It's about who you are.
It makes you wonder, though. What would Washington think about our world today? All the polarization, the crazy news cycle, social media, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, makes your head spin, doesn't it? I mean, he warned about those factions, right?
Yeah.
Back in his farewell address.
Yeah.
And today, it feels like his warning is practically screaming at us.
Yeah.
Could he even handle this? I mean, this level of division, this constant noise.
And the speed of everything. Can you imagine Washington trying to deal with Twitter? The news cycle that never stops. It's a completely different world.
It's like, how do you lead when everything's moving so fast, all this information flying around, and half of it's probably fake anyway? It's got to be a nightmare.
It makes you think about what leadership even means in this kind of world. We were talking about Washington taking his time, thinking things through, deliberate. You don't see a lot of that today. It's all instant reactions, got to have an opinion on everything right away.
It's like, who has time to actually think anymore? But that's what made Washington so effective, right? He wasn't rushing into anything, weighing his options, listening to different viewpoints.
Exactly. Maybe that's what we need now more than ever. Leaders who can cut through all the junk, all the noise, leaders who make decisions based on, fact, yes, not just what's trending on Twitter.
Leaders who can bring people together, remind us that, hey, we're all in this mess together. Even when we disagree, we've got to find a way to work it out. That's what Washington was all about, wasn't it?
He was. So we've gone from his childhood to the battlefields to the presidency. It's a heck of a story. But what really sticks with me is this. It wasn't just about what he did. It was about who he was as a person.
That's the takeaway, right? Integrity, resilience, humility. Those aren't just buzzwords. They were the foundation of everything he accomplished. It's like leadership isn't a title. It's a way of being.
And that's a lesson we can all learn from no matter what we're doing in life. So I guess that wraps up our deep dive on George Washington.
From farmer to general to president. And honestly, way more complex than any statue or portrait could ever show.
That's the beauty of these deep dives, isn't it? Peeling back the layers, getting a more complete picture. And for anyone who's feeling inspired to learn more about Washington, there's so much out there. Biographies, his writings, heck, even take a trip to Mount Vernon someday.
Yeah, get a real feel for the man and for the times he lived in. It's not just history, it's a whole different way of looking at the world.
This might be the end of the deep dive, but the thinking, the learning, that never stops.
Right.
And isn't that kind of the point of it all? To keep growing, keep questioning, keep trying to be better.
I think Washington would agree with that.
I think you're right. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep striving to make a difference.